This is 10 Easy Beginner Tricks Part 3. If you haven't already, go check out Parts 1 and 2 of this series, where I go over 20 other easy skateboard tricks for beginners. Up first this time, we have the staple gun. This is a trick that's normally done on transition, but I've transplanted it over to the street to make it a little easier for you. For this trick, we roll out a curb, pop an ollie, but leave your back foot on the ground, and then let your front foot stay on top of the board up on the curb. From there, you kind of do the splits and then pull the board back down and jump on it. This is definitely a really weird type of stall trick, but it's also really easy. One of the main things it has going for it is you don't actually have to know how to land an ollie. Mainly, if you can just pop the tail and kick your front foot forward, but leave your back foot on the ground, you should be able to get this one. So practice that a few times. And then you can try and practice this standing still while next to a curb, but I think it's actually really hard if you don't have the momentum going forward in order to get your board up. So I would just practice the 1 foot landing while rolling at the curb first. And then separately, you can work on the second half of this trick, which is pulling the board off the curb and jumping back on it. Just set your board up in that position, pull it off with your foot, and then hop onto it. It's a weird one, but you should be able to get it relatively fast. For trick number 2, we have the Caveman 50-50. This is basically the easy way of getting into a 50-50 grind. While holding the board with your hand, you go towards an object, throw the board down into 50-50, and jump on top. This trick can be an easy way to get into the world of grinding without actually having to ollie up onto big objects. Mainly, all you have to do is find something that'll actually slide, and then throw the board on it and jump on. You can practice the motion of this trick on a curb or another small ledge, but basically you just hold the board in your hand, and then as you set it down onto the curb, you jump on top. So practice that a few times until you're really comfortable. And the second half of this trick is just knowing how to come off of the ledge, which just takes pressing down on the tail a slight bit and turning off to the side. For trick number 3, we have the ollie. I know, I normally stick to the weirder kind of tricks on these lists, but this is part 3 of the series, and sooner or later we were going to have to get into the standard tricks. So an ollie is just basically when you pop your tail off the ground and jump into the air and your board stays on your feet. There are so many ins and outs about this trick and what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to do it. I mean, I could probably make a whole entire video on just that. And you know what? I actually have made 3 how-to videos for the ollie. So I'm just going to leave a link in a card and in the description for all those ollie tutorials, and hopefully you can go and check those out and learn them. For trick number 4, we have the rail stand flip. Now in my first easy beginner tricks video, I showed you the rail stand and then just coming out regular. So for this one, we're bumping it up just a tiny notch by adding an extra little flip out of the rail stand. Now I consider this an easy trick because it was the first and pretty much only trick I learned once I learned how to rail stand. And for this one, it's more about confidence than it is about skill. So basically, you're going to want to learn how to get into rail stand, which takes a combination of 2 little things. First off is pressing down on your front foot off the side of the board, which causes the board to turn on its side. This just takes a little bit of pressure downward and then pushing your foot off to the side of the board. Second, you want to make sure that your back foot is in a position where when the board flips on its side, it can easily transfer up and over onto the wheels. Once you have both of these down, you should be able to get up into the rail stand position. Now from here, you should be standing right on top of both of your wheels. And now with both feet, but having a little more emphasis on your back foot, you're going to simultaneously jump while kicking your toes against the wheels backwards, causing the board to flip over. Now this one can seem a bit tricky, and it is at first, but if you remember that golden rule of holding on to something while practicing, this one can be really easy to learn. There's definitely going to be some trial and error in this one, especially when it comes to learning how hard you want to flip the board. But once you've practiced enough and you got that feeling down, you should be able to get this one pretty easily. Just make sure you jump back when you're flipping the board. Up next, we have probably the easiest one on this list, the poor man's disaster revert. For this one, we're doing another stall on a curb where you roll up with the pressure on your front truck. You turn the board frontside 180 onto the curb, which is going to put you into a disaster stall. And from there, you turn 180 on your front truck once again in order to revert out of that stall. Now this one's pretty self-explanatory. All you really need to know how to do is pivot on your front truck. You can practice this a few times on flat ground, and then you can practice it while standing next to a curb in order to get your board on top. And finally, you can set your board up already in that disaster position and try the pivot out of that too. And after that, you sort of just put it all together. You roll at the curb at a moderate speed, pivot on your front truck and land in disaster, and then pivot again once you've stalled and roll out. This one should definitely help you with your balance and your coordination while turning your body. At number 6, we have another normal trick with the frontside shove it. I've gone over in my previous videos the backside shove it, which is the regular way. So now we're going to check out its dirty little cousin, the frontside shove it. For this one, you pop the tail down with your back foot while also pushing it forward in front of you in order to make the board rotate 180. You'll probably have to jump backwards slightly towards your heels in order to stay over the board, and then you just put both your feet down. Just like with the ollie, I'm not going to go too in-depth with this one because I do have a how-to, which I'll link. But just know when you start getting into these standard tricks, the frontside shove it is definitely in that realm of beginner tricks that you should know. All right, up now we have the axle stall. This is another trick which is primarily performed on transition, but today we're going to be taking it up onto a curb. Essentially for this one, all you're doing is rolling at the curb, popping your board 90 degrees frontside or backside, landing on your trucks on the curb, and then pulling off. Now that might sound like a lot, but really when it's all one fluid motion, it's not that bad. For this one, you're going to want to make sure that you can at least ollie onto a curb first. But really, in my opinion, it's slightly easier than that because you don't even need to get all the way up and over. Secondly, you want to make sure that you can turn 90 degrees when you ollie. All you're really doing is putting these together so that you're rolling at the curb at a moderate to slow speed, you pop the board and turn it 90, and then you hit your trucks onto the edge of the curb, locking into that stall. From there, once you have your balance, you just slightly lift up on the nose and pull your board off frontside. You can practice getting out of the stall by setting your board up already in that axle stall position, and then practicing the lifting up of the nose while turning your body frontside in order to get out of it. At number 8, we have floating stairs. Now this one isn't quite doing a firecracker downstairs, but it's also not ollieing the stairs. It's somewhere in between. And it's technically really physically easy. This one's more of a confidence thing in your head. Basically, this trick is just rolling at a set of stairs with a pretty good amount of speed, and then you're going to slightly lift up on the nose and just fly down the stairs. No ollies required. This is essentially just the same motion as rolling off of a curb, so that would be a good starting point for learning this trick. Once you can do that confidently, maybe try to do it with a little bit more speed. And from there, it's easy to slowly work your way up on either a two-stair or a little bit larger of a curb or ledge. And then finally, you can pretty much go as big as your confidence and speed allow you to. For trick number 9, we have the last of our normal tricks, the 180. Now 180 is pretty self-explanatory. You ollie and you turn your body 180. Now you can do this either front side or back side. Some people have a natural preference for which one feels easier for them. I personally prefer front side because I kind of really suck at backside. This one's all about your shoulders and making sure you wind up and then unwind them as you do an ollie. And it's also about the shifting of your weight from your back foot to your front foot as you turn. Just like the other two standard tricks, I'm not going to get really in-depth on this video because I do have a how-to on this trick. So check out the card with a link to that one, and hopefully with the other two standard tricks from this video, you'll have a pretty good foundation for getting into the quote-unquote real street tricks. And finally at number 10, we have the Noseblunt Yank In. This trick is essentially just a fancy way of dropping into a bank or transition. You set your board on the edge of the object in nose blunt position, which means your nose is all the way down touching the ground and your tail is in the air. From there, you grab the side of the board near the back with your hand, and then at the same time, you jump up with your feet and pull the board up with your hand, coming down on all 4 wheels and dropping into the ramp. This one's pretty easy. It just takes a little bit of coordination with your body parts. You want to make sure that you're pulling up with your hand and jumping off your feet pretty much at the same time. And also another thing is you want to make sure that you're not stink bugging this when you grab, which means you want to keep your arm that's grabbing the board on the outside of your leg rather than in between both of your legs. For whatever reason, it just makes it a lot easier. So for this one, you can just practice on flat ground at first by putting your board into that nose blunt position, then grabbing it with your back hand, yanking up and jumping, and then landing on the bolts. Once you're comfortable with that, you can find yourself a nice little incline and hopefully work up the courage to try this at the top and jump into the bank. So those were 10 more easy beginner tricks. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I truly hope that it helped you. If you couldn't tell, I really had to dig deep for a few of these in order to get something that was a mix between easy but still at least kind of cool and something I haven't done before. So like I said earlier, if you haven't before, you can check out my easy beginner tricks part 1 and 2, and also my easy intermediate tricks part 1 and 2. Between those videos, I have about 40 tricks that are similar to the ones that you just saw in this video. So hopefully those ones can help you too. And besides all that, I'd just like to thank you one more time for watching, and you can like and subscribe if you want.